Welcome to Power Your Profits podcast, your friendly guide in bringing your business revenue to the next level. Listen as host Susie Carter hears inspiring stories of success from her fellow entrepreneurs and transformational leaders. Prepare to make significant change to your strategies as they unravel the secrets of building multi-million-dollar businesses and the most effective tips on finance, marketing, and sales accountability. If you want to make your first step towards explosive business growth, this is the right podcast for you. Without further ado, here is your host, Susie.
I'm so excited, Josh, that you're here with me. Josh owns Up My Influence, and Josh, actually, I'm a client of Josh's, right? So I always tell you I'm bringing you my badass friends, and so I'm bringing you my badass friends that I am in business with, working with. So Josh, we did your bio, but let's just share from your point of view. Let's give them the badass list. Like, why should we listen to you? Why should we pay attention to you? Out of all the noise that's out there, give me those cliff notes, my brother.
Well, because I'm one of Susie's secret weapons. That's why. And I think that's really all I have to say.
That is true.
So here's what I'm kind of known for, right? This is my second, 7-figure company. Savings Angel, we built up over $6-7 million worth of revenue, 0 paid ads. I believe, kind of like the founder of Geek Squad said, that advertising is the tax you pay for being unremarkable. I'm not saying you shouldn't advertise, but if you don't have to, why would you? And so we gain that notoriety through our authority, right? And so when you have authority and then you couple that with platform and generosity, you can pretty much network your way into any circle you want with, again, leading with generosity, right? Building relationships, and then have any and all, joint ventures, strategic alliance, unlimited customers. And by the way, if what I'm saying sounds crazy, like crazy talk, I will break down exactly what I'm talking about. But that's essentially it, right? And so Up My Influence, that's what we do, is that we facilitate endless introductions for high ticket, high level networking and sales. And we do that without any paid ads. And because quite frankly, I'm a little skeptical when it comes to big ticket sales, and the initiation of that big ticket sale is an ad. I just don't think that big ticket sales are really done that way. I'm very much a fan of just natural, native, organic relationships.
Come on, you just dropped a bomb. Advertising is a tax you pay for being unremarkable. I'm like, I got to quote Josh on that one. That was like,
that's not my original quote. That's, I forget his name. Founder of Geek Squad said that. And I'm like, yep.
Whatever. It's good. I'm just saying it's good. It's good. So part of what you do is, right, really leveraging podcasts to increase sales. So most people, and you probably know the percentages. I don't. I just know from my own experience on being on podcasts, they're really a time suck, right? They're not an ROI. They're not a revenue generating activity. Why I fell in love with you is because you started singing my language when we started talking. You're like, if it's not making you money, why are you doing it? I'm like, Right. So let's talk about that. How do we leverage our podcast to increase sales?
So again, I'm also coming at this from the perspective that I'm the guy that's been in the media over 2,000 times. I've been a guest on over 300 podcasts. I've hosted well over 1,500 podcasts myself. Like, I feel like I know this world pretty well. So when I tell you that I've invested all of that effort to be on stages and on platforms and to serve audiences, I know full well that I am not going to make a lot of money from that new audience. When I go out and serve, my only intention is to deliver so much value that person who's listening to me for the first time, hearing my voice for the very first time, goes, okay, I'm curious. Let's see what else this guy has to offer. And then they'll go Google me. Right. And that's really, it's your best bet. In terms of like those new, fresh audiences, there's just so little know, like, and trust at the beginning. The best we can do is hope for enough curiosity to drive a few more seconds of attention. Right. That said, where do we get all of the value from podcasting? Well, I think that most podcasters are tripping over giant sacks of cash to pick up pennies, right? Because I think that they hope that they're going to build up an audience and either then work with a sponsor or sell stuff to that audience. It's really tough to do that. Yeah. I mean, if we look at the average numbers, the average podcaster will never hit 1,000 downloads per episode. They just not. And so how can you develop a business plan around something that you're probably not going to build a big audience with? Well, that's where you're going to have to get a little bit more creative in terms of like what is it that you want in business? And so what is the greatest, easiest opportunity I see in podcasting is that podcasting is a tool. Podcasting is a platform that allows you to cultivate a truly authentic relationship with anyone you want. You're going to go and extend an invite, and you and that guest are going to do an act of service together. And there's something just so psychologically, spiritually rewarding about doing service together, breaking bread together, and doing something nice for somebody else. Like there's this connection force that's so powerful. So my contention is, why don't we use a podcast and say, listen, I really want to build a relationship with folks in this community. They're all at this level, like they all have ability and desire to pay. If they only knew what I did for work, for what our business is. So rather than selling at them, don't do that.
Right.
Just, reach out and say, a la Bob Berg, the go-giver, right? I'm going to go out and I'm going to do nice things for nice people who I want to build relationships with. And then we'll see where the relationship goes. Right. And when you have that trust that you don't need the sale, and you don't need to sell to everybody, and instead allow sales to be the natural outcome of you just being a good person in the world and networking and being generous with that level, guess what? Your sales are going to go, they're going to explode because people trust you. And that's really what we want. We want to get to know, like, and trust. And the best way to get to know, like, and trust is to create familiarity, right? I become familiar with Susie Carter. First, it's proximity. I started watching Susie's videos. I started listening to Susie's podcast. And now I feel like I start to get to know you, Susie. And then that's what's called familiarity bias. So familiarity bias is I feel like I know Susie, but we haven't even actually spent time together. So then by the time we get to spend time together, now it's like, Susie, like I get on the video call and I feel like I know her already. Well, if you've ever had a sales call start off where the person's like, oh my gosh, I've watched like hours of your video.
Yes.
It's probably going to be not a hard conversation to get to a point where you're going to find a way to work together.
Yeah. I had that last week, my client Ziggy. She's like, Susie, I'm ready. I don't need to have any more conversation. You've been following you. I've worked with you. I'm like, oh, okay. I'm making it too hard, right? Quit making it hard. They're ready, right? When you do all those steps. So,
yes,
I'm affirming. We closed $150,000, right? By doing exactly what Josh is saying,
amazing.
Right? I'm a good student. Right? I'm a good teacher because I'm a good student. So what is the Go-Giver philosophy, right? So you held up the book. So you're an advocate of that. I'm an advocate of that, right? Of giving first, right? Don't come with your hand out and go, what can Josh do for me? What can Josh do for me?
No.
Especially when I'm looking at partnership with somebody to go, let me see what my customers will experience. I think that's powerful because then firsthand. Because you and I were talking a little bit about in the beginning, there's so many charlatans in any industry, but in our industry to go, who's the real deal? Who's doing it? Who's whatever they're promising, they're actually delivering that. So talk about your philosophy in the Go-Giver.
Yeah, your intention is transparent. We know what you want. And part of this, Susie, this cultural where we've gotten to. Let me kind of just explain why I say what I say. In the age of the internet, we are bombarded with advertising messages. So in the past, you may have been able to get away with manipulative sales tactics and techniques. You can't do that anymore. That's a non-starter. Like people will be out of there so quickly. So you can't do that, right? So,
and the buyer's more sophisticated. We were way more
that's
sophisticated.
Absolutely it.
We were. way back in the day when we were all green. Well, people know now.
Sophisticated, cynical, protective, and protective of our time, protective of our attention. So you're not fooling anybody. You can't fool audiences. You can't fool potential customers, right? So if your intention is to make a sale, guess what? We know. We can tell, we can feel it, because we're on edge already for that. So that's why I say, you have to change. If you're waking up in the morning, your feet hit the ground, and you say, who am I going to sell to today? You're going to find it's going to be hard for you. If you wake up and you have an alternative, an alternate motivation. Who do I get to serve to today? What I do changes lives. What I do creates good in the world. And if you're not at that place with your product or service, you're going to need to find a way to get there. Otherwise, you're always going to be trying to roll a big stone uphill. You got to be in that place where you recognize that what you do, you have a moral obligation to do what you do. Now, that said, we're going to serve in a way where, we have to ask ourselves, who is your customer and what do they want? Right. And who do they want it from? Right. So if you reach out and you slide into those DMs and you're like, hey, how'd you like to increase your bottom line? And you start doing the, song and dance, and you start selling, sliding into the DMs. Again, it's a non-starter. Right. Susie, I'm sure you get DMs. You're like, it's just so icky. Right. It's about the ickiest thing I experience on on a regular basis. It's just people selling at me so quickly. And I'm like, I don't know who you are, and you don't know who I am. Why are you selling? It's like, going on a first date and saying, you want to meet my parents. I'm like, whoa, I don't even, it's just way too early. And here's the thing. Right. So what I'm explaining in the marketplace, another really good book on this is called Marketing Rebellion by Mark Schaefer. And he talks about the state of the market. And this is, listen, big companies know this. They know exactly where consumers' heads are. I want to let you know that as a business owner, as a marketer, this is not your fault. This is the fault of overzealous marketers overfishing the waters. And now there's blood in the water. And guess what? Marketers ruin everything, essentially, I think is the bottom line. And so what we have to do is just rehumanize what we do. I think BombBomb's done some really good work. Ethan Butte over there. I forget he's got 2 books all about rehumanizing sales and rehumanizing business. But I'm a big, big fan of that as well. It's like, so anything a marketer does to try and shortcut the system, my recommendation is do the opposite. Right. So what they're doing is they're racing to the bottom, right? And what I find is that usually it's really, really difficult to get quality decision makers when you're trying to bastardize and cheapen the process. It's because it's just like I said, it's non-starter. So instead, you want to spend more and this was our whole philosophy with media, like how I got 2,000 media appearances, is I spend more time with fewer people and I invest into those relationships. I always show up, I find out what they need, and I help them, because I know that if I help them enough, a great example, Lewis Bolden, their local CBS affiliate, he found out that I was a local consumer guy, and he said, well, look, can you help me with a story about this car recall? I'm like, I have nothing to gain from that. But I didn't say that to him, but I was thinking that. I'm like, Lewis, I'd be thrilled to. Right? I have nothing to gain from that. But what I know is like, wait a minute, if I keep helping Lewis, there may be an opportunity here. So I'm just going to keep showing up. And you can't do this for everybody, but in the case of, it's a center of influence. It's a, potential customer, and they appear to have an ability and desire to pay, right? Yes. And by all means, you better believe I'm going to invest into that. And sales will become the natural outcome. So in the case of Lewis, I did that story. Then I did a second story. He's like, Josh, tell me about Savings Angel, my other company. And I started telling him, he's like, well, we ought to do a story about you. And I'm like, Lewis, that's a great idea. All along, I was like, I'm hoping when the time is right, because I'm not going to push it. Yes. Well, do I hope for it? Yeah, of course. Right. But again, you just allow it to happen. What you'll find, Susie, and I know you know this, right, is professionals who have been in business for some length of time, like they will reciprocate. But you have to give them the space to reciprocate. Don't ask it on the first date, maybe even not the second date, but just allow that to come up naturally in the conversation. And you might feel like what I'm talking about right here is inefficient. But it's actually the most, because you're not wasting time. You're not burning relationships. You're not just running around selling at everybody. Okay. You're showing up and you're building key relationships that can last a lifetime.
Well, it's playing the long game versus a short game.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So it's putting in like, what is my long game and what am I willing to do for that? Because the right partners, stay for a long time. I'm looking for partnerships. I'm not looking for, hit it and quit it. Right. So to look at that, and my sales time isn't called sales time. We all have it. It's called creating wealth. Because I'm not selling anybody. I don't want to sell anyone. Because the minute I sell them, then I've got to convince them, cajole them, and I don't want to do that. Nope. Right? So it's about creating that. So I love that, we're both speaking to that.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So let's look at, right, so what things must we do? Because part of it's, upping your influence and leveraging your influence and, really launching their podcast. And what are the things I must do? Right? Because a lot of people, again, they throw it up, and it's like spaghetti on the wall and go, well, here's what you should have done, right? Because it takes too long. I got to learn. And then I'm like, damn it, if I knew then what I knew now, right? I'm trying to save us that if I knew then, if I knew then what I know now. I'm saving myself too. I just want to be honest.
Yeah. So are you asking, how specifically do we want to set up our podcast to create that? Is that?
Well, I think it's what's the must, right? So it's not just interviewing people. Like
no. See,
I think one of the sexy conversations we had, one of the two conversations, you're like, how are we monetizing?
Yeah, that is a sexy conversation, Susie.
I'm like,
I wonder.
I don't know. How are we monetizing? You tell me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So here's the thing, right? That's not rocket science to say, okay, interview your potential customers, right? And that's not rocket science. Okay. You're aimed in the right direction, but what I don't want you to do is you cannot bastardize that process, right? Because if you do that, you're going to ruin it for yourself. You're going to ruin it it's going to create an uncomfortable environment. So here's how here's how I love to make sales. I like to give people the information that they're seeking, right? The stuff that they really, really want. And in media, so when I do media training, this is my background. Let's say I'm coaching a CEO or an attorney or whatever, and they're like, well, hey, I got this book and I really want to sell this book on this TV segment. I'm like, well, you can't.
Right.
Because if you do that, you will be blacklisted. You will never be invited back. And that's you making the recommendation. I'm not going to have you do that. So, but here's how you do that, right? So it's selling without selling. And here's how it sounds, right? And so if I were to, let's say you were to ask me a question about like stages of business, for example, right? Susie, and I would say, yeah. So, and in fact, I learned a lot about this at Tony Robbins' Business Mastery event. And I actually had the opportunity to speak for Business Mastery to his Business Mastery students. And one thing that Tony will talk about is, you kind of start off with the baby and then the infant and the child stage and blah, blah, blah in business or whatever. Okay. Now, the only reason I'm telling you this story about what Tony teaches is for one throwaway line that I said. And that line was, what do you think? What do you think the line that I wanted you to hear, but I acted like I didn't really care if you heard it or not? Do you remember what it was that I said? It was the throwaway line. And I've had the opportunity to speak for the Tony Robbins organization. And so it's like when you hear that, right, all of a sudden your opinion of me goes, assuming that's a net positive. Tony Robbins is like, even if you like him or don't like him, he's like, okay, well, to get invited to Tony Robbins' audience, obviously you have to have something going on. Right. Or me talking about being in the media and throwing in that line. Yeah. And I've had the opportunity to be in the media over 2,000 times. And one thing that I've learned is Okay. So I'm giving you what you want, right? I'm giving you the meat, right? Because that's what you want. You want an answer to the question, but I'm answering it in a way where I can share with you my authority as part of the answer. So, in the case of wanting to sell a lot of books, you have to sell by telling stories, but the stories can't sound like a sales pitch. They have to be color. They have to provide color, but those are the talking points that you actually want to include in that answer. So hopefully that wasn't too subtle, but I'm telling you, that's all you have to do. So same thing when we're talking about this podcasting stuff, right? Okay. So if someone is coming into your world, why not spend maybe a 15-minute pre-interview call with them beforehand? Maybe you do, hey, before we record this interview, I recorded a few quick little videos for you so you know exactly who my audience is, exactly the kind of stuff that they're after, right? Just watch this before we record, just so you're prepped. Almost anyone will do that. And Kevin Harrington from Shark Tank watched my videos, right? Now, all along the way, I'm explaining who my audience is, the questions I'm going to ask, giving you some audio video tips, and I am dripping in all sorts of authority indicators there. So by the time you get done watching the information, you're like, okay, cool, I got the info. I know who the audience is. But along the way, you're like, wow, this Josh guy seems like he knows some stuff here, or people really respect what he has to say, which if we're going from zero, so zero is, well, I don't even know who Josh is other than he's got a podcast. So, okay, maybe I'm a 1, right? Then they start watching the videos. Now they're at a 2, 3. Oh, wow. Really? He does that too. 4. Oh, wow. 5, so if I can get them up to a 4 or 5, by the time I talk with them, Susie, that's the equivalent of someone coming on saying, I've watched all your videos, which makes a much better sales, a much better environment that is natural for sales. And you have to deliver it so that, these decisions to move forward in the relationship, you want to design it so that it's always your guest, that they're the ones that are saying yes to that next thing. So part of, my environment is I want you to see who I am and what I do. And I'm going to make it, hopefully I can make it feel like it's entirely your idea, because I want it to be your idea. If it's my idea and I'm constantly trying to sell at you, then like you just said, Susie, like I'm going to have to do that our whole relationship. I don't want to do that.
Right.
I'd rather you take an interest in what I do and, let you lead in that.
Right. Well, I love that, because you do a lot, right? When you look at, the niche that you focus on, because you take 6-figure businesses and turn them to 7-figure rock stars, right? That's your jam. That's what you do. And so what do you think that the biggest missing thing is people do, or I say sabotage, right? When trying to get to that next level, right? Yeah.
So, well, clearly, listen, anyone could today, you could get to 6 figures. Like getting to 6 figures today, rest on my confidence. It's not that hard today, right? Okay. If you are good at something, keep serving audiences and you will, and Susie, I wouldn't even have up my influence today because I was humming along nicely with my other company, Savings Angel. And then I started doing a lot of pro bono work in our local startup community, just serving. Right? Hey, here's how I got in the media, for Savings Angel. Here's how you can do it. And I don't even have anything for sale. And then people would say, yeah, but can I hire you anyway? And I'm like, wow, okay. So you can get to 6 figures just doing that, right? By learn, be the best at one very specific thing, and then teach other people how to do it. You don't have to sell. Just the more generous you are, the more people. I've had people hear me like on a completely pro bono, no selling kind of presentation, reach out and like, here's, offering like $8,000 for a day just to spend the day with me, because of the value that I delivered in that. Right. So that's kind of, Susie, I forgot the original question. There was something really important why I had to share that other stuff.
What do they do to sabotage, right? To get to that 7 figures.
Oh, to get to 7 figures. Okay. All right. Yes. So here's the deal. It's easy to get to 6. Getting to 7, you're going to need to really hone in on systems, team, culture, delegation, and in your organization, hardcore Michael Gerber, E-Myth, build up those systems and processes, elevate people, find amazing people. When it comes to operations, I do very little. I honestly, my team is way better at a lot of the operational fulfillment than I am. I would just clutter it up. I do one very specific thing. I build relationships, and that's pretty much all I do. I argue that honestly, one of the best things a CEO can do is just spend their days building high-level relationships. I get to talk with Susie. Here's what my reality is. Okay. And so when I talk about these ideas of platform and leveraging podcasts, think about this. Think of your own sales flow right now to our listener, someone's listening to us right now. How many people, high-level decision makers, do you chat with on a regular basis, weekly and qualified? I'm talking about qualified people, weekly or monthly basis. What's that number? Write that down. Okay. How many would you like to be chatting with? Right. And so, because I believe that most problems in business, Susie, I believe can be solved with the proper application of money. Right. We invest in some things, hire some more people, invest some more systems, training, whatever it is. But right, that's how we improve our systems, and we get to do what we do better. We fix problems. Revenue is a function of sales. Sales, I believe, is mostly if your sales system's generally good and your product's generally good, then talk to more people, because that's really all you have to do at that point. Just talk to more people. So right now, I chat with 12 to 15 people every single week.
Yeah.
I am booked out for the next 10 weeks, which means at any given time, I have more than 100 people in my queue to ultimately have sales conversations with. That, Susie, as when we're recording this, is 100% inbound and has been 100% inbound for more than 2 years. I don't advertise. I don't even do lead gen stuff anymore.
Right.
And that's the thing. When you pay your dues, and if you work your guts out for 6 months to build up this reputation of authority and generosity and platform, in about 6 months' time, we see this because we now have we have about 120 clients. And it's the same pattern for all of them.
Right.
We work real hard for 4 to 6 months, and then organic kicks in. And then you don't have to work at all. People will line up to get to know you, right? Because of what you're leading with and what the nature of the relationship is.
Well, I love, because you're taking influence and you're systematizing influence, right? You're taking it and going, here, I'm just following the system. And I tell my students that all the time. It doesn't have to be hard. It just has to be strategic. Yeah. But if you don't know what you don't know, then you run around doing all the frivolous stuff that's not producing the result for you, right? When I look at that, because you help people monetize high-end sales, right? Get them a press. Like you do some juicy stuff, right? You get some PR placements, right? And very cost effective. Right?
Yeah. It's cool. Right. And in fact, it's, we actually don't even do, there came to a point, and Susie, I'm sure you have experience with this as well, and other people do. We, up until, I'd say for the past 6 years, media and PR, it's pretty much media consulting and PR and authority and stuff. That's pretty much all we did. And then 2 years ago, we built our own internal sales system, leveraging a lot of what I'm talking about here today. It was really interesting. So I had one of my clients I was doing PR for. She's like, hey, PR is all good and stuff, but I know what you guys are doing on the sales thing. Hook me up. And so we did. We ended up making $175,000 in 90 days. And then we did the same thing for one of her clients. She made six figures in 90 days. Third client, more business he could possibly handle within 60 days. And so I'm like, well, shoot, maybe I should be doing maybe I should actually provide that as a service. I don't know. People seem to be wanting it, seems to be working. So we got to a point, Susie, where the value of this line of work that we were doing, and a lot of it was based on our network. I mean, we do have some pretty good networks we're able to tap into. But yeah, the value of our network at some point exceeded the value of our PR services. So I may have to make a decision of like, I'm just, we're doing like B level work over here, and we're doing like A plus level work over here. So yeah, I actually had to let go of all my media clients and say, it's hard for me to keep focused on that.
Right. Awesome. Right. I love that supply and demand, right? When the demand is greater than the supply.
and just being in the game. I love this analogy that I heard the other day was like, when the car is moving, it's easy to turn the steering wheel. But when you're sitting and parked and you're just not doing anything, it's like, I don't know. Maybe that might be old school steering wheel or whatever. But that's the idea, right?
Right. Or I remember, right? Because it is.
Yeah. When you're in movement, you are going to be exposed to so much opportunity. So 10x your conversations. Just talk with more people. My podcast, The Thoughtful Entrepreneur, is I've recorded over 1,100 episodes at this point. We're just getting close to 1,000 now published. If all I did that podcasting just for the people that I would meet and the ideas that I would get from them, like I'm getting therapy every day. I'm like, hey, I'm asking the questions that I need to know.
Right.
I'm not afraid to let people know where I'm like, man, listen, I think we're really screwing up on this. How would you fix this problem? And now I get someone who's like normally charging, $500, $800 an hour, is giving me free advice. Podcasting is there are so many benefits to having a podcast. I haven't sold you in on it. I'm going to keep working on it.
So what would you say, Josh, the biggest challenge in your business you're facing right now?
Oof. Wow. Yes, but my biggest challenge right now is I am still the point man for way too much of that sales activity. If I'm being very transparent, it's still me. And that said, I know the stage we're in business, and I'm not too bothered by that. It's a lot of work. Like if you were to look at my schedule, I'm booked, 10 to 4 every day. All day long. I get a break for lunch, 30-minute break for lunch. But other than that, I'm talking with people all day long. And so next phase, very simply, right, is, standardize the sales process a little bit more, and then just start working more and more people in. That said, I have a lot of help on the sales front. But again, it's, business owners and CEOs should be doing only what only they can do. And anything else that can be delegated, they should be doing. And I'd say that growth or talking business owner to business owner, that's the last thing that I've been hanging on to in terms of, the company. But I would say that's probably the biggest threat, because Susie, I think if I were to, let's say, have to take a month off, heaven forbid, right? I think that would negatively impact our business a bit more. That said, boy, I've been talking with some smart folks around that because it's a problem that it's absolutely, it's a known issue. And it's something that I'm working on for, probably a Q1, Q2 thing for 2022. That's what I meant to say.
Just say next year. Next year.
And I need to make sure that the business is in a situation where it's not dependent on my effort at all.
Right. Oh, that's so great, because we're having the same conversation. Like I'm at capacity to go, I can't do more of the things, and these are the things I shouldn't be doing, right? Talking to my team, trying to find the right people for our culture and what we're doing. So you have to be smart enough to see it, to go, I got to get out of the way.
Yes.
And I'm the thing that is stopping it. So I'm always looking at what system can I put in place. I have a little sticky on my desk that I look at every day. What's the highest income producing activity, right? That only I can do.
Yep.
And everything else I got to give to my team and go, you figure it out. That's why I'm paying you. And then realize that sometimes, and I think that's hard when you're, I love my team, but sometimes you outgrow your team, right? Because they can't keep up to our fastness. I mean, you're fast. You are lightning quick. I'm fast. Right. And go, okay, what do I need to keep up with? What do I need to do? How do we make it happen? And so I can still love them. I just don't have to keep paying them if they're not producing the result that we need as a fast growing company.
We've experienced that. We've definitely experienced it. And in fact, part of getting out of the media side was like, look, there's a misalignment here in culture of like who we've become, because culture evolves as well. And, when you stumble upon new realizations about, what my moral obligation is, and, there's changes to the culture, and there's been some higher level team members where there's been, just like, look, I think we're kind of drifting apart here. They're not coming with us. So, unfortunately, we have to kind of separate ways there.
Yeah, and I think you can complete that relationship without drama, right? I think
Oh my gosh, yes, please.
you know,
And it
when you
truly
grow
is
up, you think there has to be drama to end something. It's like, no, we're
no,
just complete,
no. In
right? We're complete.
love, yeah.
Yeah,
In love, this is where I'm going, and I don't want to keep trying to, this is where you are right now. And I feel like, and so I always take ownership for that, right? When a situation
yeah,
like that, I feel like I'm trying to, put that square peg into the round hole. And when we started, it was a square hole. And right now I've made it a round hole, and that's on me. So
right.
I feel badly that I keep asking you to do something that I don't know that that's really, where you want to go. And so what should we do about that? And then I just let them, I kind of point out the obvious, and let them know that it really is, I care about them. So where do we go? What should we do here?
Right.
I'm not going to change.
Exactly. It's my company. I'm
not going backwards.
The leader,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So, what's one question you wish I would have asked you, or that we should know that I didn't even think to ask you, or I should have asked you?
Boy, I think we covered all the good stuff. Other than that, I'd say, boy, Susie, I don't know. What do other people tell you? What do they? What's the question? What do they say?
Oh,
you're good.
Depends, right? It just depends. Sometimes it's, what's the thing that they wish they would have known earlier, right? That's a lot of mine.
No, I'm at peace with that. It's really easy to look at, missed opportunities or mistakes in the past. But, that's the same thing of like, with Tony would talk about blaming elegantly. You could blame your parents, you could blame, a former spouse or friend or business partner. And it's easy to do that. But, think of who you are today. And, I failed, Susie, in business 6 times before I started my first 7-figure company. And some of those failures were pretty painful. I lost a house to foreclosure. I went through personal bankruptcy, and that sucks. And especially as in our culture as a, husband and father, and I was supposed to be the provider. And, here I am having to go live with my in-laws, for a period of time. That's very humbling. Yeah. But Susie, had I straight out of high school, become a millionaire, I don't think that I would have the level of conscientiousness that I do today. I have a lot of empathy for folks that are struggling in business, or, they're doing it and it's not working and they're not getting the sales, or it's inconsistent, or it's, they're getting told no, or they tried something, or they wasted a bunch of money on something. Right. I am so empathic to you having that experience, to anyone who's experienced that. Been there, done that. I've blown 25 grand
got
on
the t-shirt. Me too.
Oh, yeah.
Been there, done that. Got all the trophies.
Yep.
But I think I always say that's my, like your stripes, your general stripes.
Yes.
You earned it. Not that I ever want to anybody sued by an employee, but when you are, like, all of a sudden it's like, it's part of business, right?
Yeah.
Bankruptcy, it's there for a reason. You learn, I've learned, right, to go, never go in there again. Like it taught us. It taught us what to do and what not to do.
Yeah. So, there's 4 main ways we learn, right? There's learn knowledge. There's you hear Josh say something, okay, cool, good idea. And then you follow my advice for some strange reason. That's learn knowledge. Number 2 is activity knowledge. Try the thing. Arthur Schopenhauer, philosopher, said, do the thing, have the power. It's like when you experience your first kiss, you're not going to forget it. Right. And so do that thing, test it, and see what happens. Number 3 is modeling knowledge, right? Where it's like you find someone that's has something that you want, do what they do, and you'll start to get the same results. And finally, number 4 is teaching knowledge. When I go and I teach this, I reinforce my own philosophy, my own learnings, and it becomes more integral with who I am. And there's a power in lighting someone else's candle. There's a power in creating good in the world, right? That always comes back. And where you plant your seeds, it's not necessarily where you reap your harvest, but keep planting the seeds regardless.
Delicious. Well, you heard it here on Power Your Profit podcast. Josh, how can people get a hold of you? How can we, learn more about what you're up to and what you're doing, and utilize Susie's secret weapon, right? Because I'm bringing you on here because you're one of my secret weapons.
Yeah. Listen, if you're rocking it in business, you've been following Susie's advice. Good for you. If you've hit that level, especially if you're B2B or service-based agency, consultant, coach, or whatever, I have a daily podcast, The Thoughtful Entrepreneur. I am always looking for great guests. So you could just go to my website. That website is www.upmyinfluence.com. And then just scroll down to the bottom where it says now booking guests, click there. And I'd love to feature you. If you're not quite at that level, listen, there's all sorts of free stuff. You don't even have to opt in. I'll never know you're there, but I will teach you this stuff very explicitly for free. And you know what? If we never do business, that's fine, because I know that I've done good in the world. If we do have an opportunity to partner together in some way, well, that would be a thrill. But again, that's all at our website, upmyinfluence.com.
Awesome. Thank you, Josh. Thank you for who you are in the world. Thank you for always being a leader and always serving first. I appreciate you. And here's to another episode of Power Your Profits. Please share with all your colleagues about Josh, because he is a secret weapon. So thank you, my brother. Have a blessed day.
Thank you, Susie.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Power Your Profits podcast. Let these building blocks from today's most successful industry leaders equip you with the necessary resources and tools to finally establish the highly profitable business of your dreams. Want to hear more? Listen to more episodes at https://poweryourprofitspodcast.com. And don't forget to subscribe to the show. Now is your time to rise to the top of your game, so be sure to catch our next episode. Until next time.